Most people, when they're thinking about how to price a product or service, tend to look in the one place where they absolutely will not find the information they need to answer that question. Okay, that sounds a bit of a bold thing to say, but let me explain to you what I mean. Today we're going to look at value-based pricing. Now, the most important thing about value-based pricing is it's not the value that I put on my product or service, it's the value that you, the customer or client, puts on that product or service. And where do most people try and get insights and information from? They go into their own heads, their own world, understand what they would do, and then they think they have the answer to the question. Yeah? So the most important thing when we're talking about value-based pricing is to understand what your potential client would pay, what value they would ascribe to the product or service, and under what conditions they would really, really value the product or service. Now, in a moment, I'm going to go back to my favourite cake example, but before I do that, let's just think for a second about the under what conditions question, because this might be the most valuable tool that you have in terms of shaping and building your business. If you're like me, I am sure there are occasions where you have paid way over the price that you first thought of for something, maybe because you loved it, or maybe in the case of something like an airline ticket, because quite simply the one flight that left at a sensible time, that wasn't going to get you where you needed to be on time without you being absolutely exhausted, was 2 or 3 times the other flights that were available that day. And nonetheless, on that particular occasion, you went, that's fine, I'll sort it out afterwards, I'll put it on a credit card, or this is a justifiable business expense, and you paid a premium. So please, never, ever, ever fall into the trap of not understanding what your customer or client wants. So, let's go back to the issue of cake. Yeah? Now, when I think about what I want from a cake, I have a set of criteria. One, of course, because my partner is gluten intolerant, is that any cake has to be gluten-free because we have to share it, be able to share it. Or maybe more importantly, if he decides we're sharing it, even though I don't want to, I have to make sure that he won't actually make him ill, because otherwise my life really would be not worth living. So for me, a special cake, it needs to be gluten-free. It needs to be tasty. I personally love cakes that have got almond in them. Even fruit cakes, I like to make them with almond flour rather than making them with any of the other alternatives, such as rice flour, anything like that. I particularly like cakes that they keep, so that if I've got them in a tin for a week, 2 weeks, if I haven't eaten them all, the cake itself will still be good. And I like cakes that smell good as well as taste good and look good. So those are some of the things that I look for in a cake. Yeah? Now, so slightly different exercise today. I'm not going to ask you to answer what your customer wants from a cake, because as I said, that's the one thing that you can't answer without asking. So today's exercise is slightly different. What do you need to ask your potential customer in order to understand the value that they could really get from your product or service? What else could you ask them? Just scan down the list you've written so far. If you ask them those questions, do you think you'd get some insights, some new insights, some surprising information even? What's the most outrageous question you could ask them? And if you haven't got it on your list, please note the down. Under what conditions would you buy this? And maybe under what conditions would you really pay a premium price for it? I'm going to leave you to finish this exercise on your own, and I'll see you on the next video where we look at how you can monetize your answers to these questions.